What's going on, everybody? Barnyard here, logging in for the first time this morning. It's a Monday morning. My last login would have been last night, probably about 11 p.m. or so before I went to bed. So you'll notice I did not do any of my friends, my shards, my spins. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. Always claim all, send all when you get on there. First things first, we'll go ahead and do that. Next thing I always do, I go to my shop. Check my main shop. I'm looking for agility, endurance, and then capacity shards. Those are your best value right now. Arguably, the queen upgrades are a little overpriced, and I'd have to do a price point comparison on the royal jelly shards to see if they pop up, if they're worth it. So now we did that. We'll go ahead and do our spins. I'm doing this video to be a quick one. I know a couple people have asked, like, hey, what's your typical playthrough procedure? And I went over it with my first video, but this one's going to be a little bit shorter. It's just going to be, hey, full send out, explaining the exact process of what I'm trying to do and why I'm doing it that way. So, again, me being a little bit larger account with especially more densely populated Genesis bees, I'm able to hit further zones than a lot of other players that aren't necessarily putting in the same amount of capital. So this is more of a whale-ish guide or a larger account, higher leveled account type strategy. And mine is also tailored towards me, right? If you wanted to, you could spam bees in your hive. You could be running 500, 600, 700 bees and just targeting low zone lands all day. And you're constantly refreshing the bees on cooldown. I tend to be a little bit more passive in my play style, and I'm logging in 4, 5, maybe 6 times a day. I'm trying to get full send out harvests and hunts. And I'm not nearly as optimized when bees are returning and sending them back out. I'm waiting for my full squads and trying to do it as little as possible while still achieving a lot of HXD and a lot of hunting. So as you can see, I still have one land that's in the process of, my bees harvesting right now. And this was from last night. You can see there's 19 bees on there right now. My bees are almost filled up with their harvesting. So the owner used a poison bomb on land, and then I assume that Zaviria is also battling with me for the harvest here. So in this case, with these bees sitting here harvesting, still kind of stuck essentially, I'm going to fill this up with the rest of their squad, and I'm going to send them hunting, right? So you see, I organize my hive by squads, right? I have it named pretty standard, I guess. These are sorted by likes, but Zone 8, I have 6 squads of 12 bees that are capable of going to Zone 8. This is a mix of Genesis bees and then upgraded Gen 1 bees, so they are able to get the endurance stat to 270. In this case, this whole squad is on that land. I'm going to fill it out with the last 3 bees here. I'm going to have them hunting. Hopefully this ends up working that these 3 bees end up getting their honey pots finished right around the same time that these 9 bees currently on there end up finishing their harvest. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that's one occupied land. My next strategy, I'm going to try and fill up the rest of the possible Zone 8 lands that I do not own. And by doing this, we're looking for, my cutoff is usually around 8 HXD in reserves and 0 competition harvesting. When I'm going to Zone 8 and Zone 7 lands, I'm usually almost exclusively only harvesting. That's just kind of how my strategy works on it. Typically, if you can find a land with 8 or more reserves, the whole squad's going to finish around the same time. And this is a perfect example, right? Almost 9 HXD in reserve, 0 bees harvesting, so we'll go ahead and go that. Filter to my squad, 8-1, and I'll send all of them out to harvest. And we're going to repeat this process, 4 more times. We already have 2 squads out. It's a Zone 7 land, we don't want that. Zone 8. And the reason you do it like this, right, is how the tiered halving is the mechanic, is what it's called, right, is the lower zone you go, the higher tax, I guess, you have on it. Tax being like a capacity tax, essentially, right? It's not a traditional tax. It's the fact that Zone 8 will produce, if you're harvesting on a Zone 8, you're going to get the maximum potential amount of land. If you notice here, I'm going to land with like roughly 6 HXD in reserve, and for doing that, I'm actually not going to want to use this squad. I'm going to send a couple out to hunt on this one as well, just to kind of balance it out. The fact that there's less reserves than I typically want, so I'll probably go 2 to hunt while the other 10 are harvesting. If Zone 8 is the maximum potential HXD you can harvest, Zone 7 is it's a percentage smaller. Zone 6 is percentage smaller even than that. Best way to kind of think of it is if Zone 8 produces 1 HXD and you go to harvest it, the max you can get is 1 HXD. If Zone 7 produces 1 HXD, the way the tiered halving works, the most you could potentially harvest from that 1 HXD would be 0.85 HXD. And the reason the team did this is so that the competition level is more dispersed between higher to lower zone lands, and it also rewards people for going for the higher zone lands as opposed to just spamming level, zone 1 lands where there's less competition, but still getting as equal rewards as going to a zone 8 land. So it's actually a pretty smart way for them. See, there we go. There's a lot of HXD there, but you have 10 bees harvesting on there already, so we don't want to fight them. The way they tiered it, it really does incentivize going to further zones. The problem then is it's just the endurance gate, right? So, and you see that if you're going to buy bees on the open market, there's a reason that the Zone 8 bees are the most expensive. Zone 7 is next. The endurance stat actually ends up kind of being the floor price designator for bees when you're selling. That's what you're looking for, is you're trying to find the highest endurance bees. And there's a chart that shows you what endurance gets you to what zone, right? So you need 270 endurance to get to Zone 8, unless you're a Genesis bee and unless you own the Zone 8 land. Man, lands are pretty busy today. This I might have to go back and try and lower my standards to 6 or 7 HXD reserve if I can find some. But this is the most competitive I've seen the lands in a while. Normally I don't have any problem finding 6 lands that I can send my bees out on, but today, maybe it's because I'm a little bit later in the day, I tend to, there we go. Now, if you notice, this is an extreme land, so we need to make sure that we're exclusively harvesting on this, because we don't know the shards that are available, and the fact that there isn't many hunting on there, probably not the best shards on this drop today. So there's a whole different strategy for hunting extreme lands compared to hunting non-extreme lands, and I can do a whole nother video about that too. We're not going to go into that today though. Man, I think we might have to jump on this being a 6 HXD reserve. Oh, there we go. There's the 10. So we'll go ahead and send our 12 bees out. And Boomer is a friend, so I'm going to help him out here with an item. I talked to him last night. He asked if I could hit him with a shard, or a lantern, so I will do that. So what this lantern does is you use this item and it increases, I guess it decreases the drop timer for shards on this land. So we'll go ahead and use that just for Boomer. We'll give him the shout out on it. So and we'll keep harvesting there. It's a symbiotic relationship with our buddy Boomer. So I think we have 1 land left. We'll go check up here, see if we can find anything with some reserves. If not, we'll go back down there to the land with about 6 or so HXD in reserve. And there we go, almost 9. So I can tell right here from this screen, without going to the squad specific, these are the last 12 that are capable of reaching a Zone 8. So that's my last squad. We'll go ahead and send those out. And now we're going to look for a Zone 7. I have 1 squad capable of getting to Zone 7. And if you look on here, that would be my Zone 7-1. These squads I have set up already based on moods, but I do not have the endurance shards yet in order to upgrade them. Once the SFT market comes out, I'll be able to buy some more endurance shards, some more endurance upgrades, and I'll be able to get all of these bees and all of these bees to that 230 endurance mark that gets them to Zone 7. So until that happens, as I'm stuck with 6 squads to Zone 8, 1 squad to Zone 7, and then my personal lands, I own 1 Zone 8, so I go there first. So that's always the strategy, right? Is you go to as many Zone 8s as you can, as many Zone 7s as you can. I go to my own lands. I go to my Zone 8s first. I max harvest that. I go to my other Zone 8 land, right there. And even with competition on this one, I'm getting the advantage, right? Because if it's too slow, if my bees are stuck too long, I can use items on there to ensure that my bees are going to have an upper hand. I'm also getting a climate boost on here, meaning that my agility of my bees is higher. and we'll go from there. So next part of my strategy is once I have my 9 lands from the zone 8s and zone 7s, I'm going to go through and look at my lands for zone 6s and zone 5s. Again, the benefit of hunting and harvesting on your own lands is worth it in that one, you get to keep the harvest fee, you get to keep the hunting fee, right? So you're not paying someone else in order to do missions. And then if need be, you're able to use item shards, right? Or the items to give your bees the advantage. Typically when I'm doing this, I'm looking at my zone 6s. I have three seasides right off the rip. So I always just, on my zone 6s and zone 5s, I'm doing a 9-3 split, 9 being harvest, and then 3 hunts with there, and I'll send them out. The cool thing about lower zone lands is because you're not getting nearly as much HXD because of that tiered halving that we talked about, your bees come back a lot faster, right? Because their capacity gets reduced. And that's the deciding factor for when your bee completes a mission. Is if you're harvesting, it's whenever their capacity fills up to the max, they come on back to your hive. On hunting, it's if they get a honeypot shard, right? So tiered halving doesn't really affect hunting at all. So we'll go ahead and sit those out. My zone 5 meadow, I always try to get it. Even if there's competition here, I'm just going 9 and 3. And generally, these zone 5 specifically, these bees should come back in a full cycle with my zone 8s and stuff, right? Just even with that additional competition there, the HXD regeneration is enough, and then the tiered halving is enough that it's really not a whole lot of competition until we get 20 plus bees in addition to mine on there. So we'll do the same thing here with the summit, 9 and 3, and we'll just work our way down our list. Go with the desert here. One of these days, I've been kind of dragging my feet. I plan on optimizing the rest of these bees also by likes into different squads, similar to how I have my zone 8s and my zone 7s. But currently right now, and even I'd have to do the math on it to see, right? By doing like matches like that, is you're getting a capacity boost. When you're doing landform matches, as I do right here, you're getting an agility boost. So I think that's also part of the reason why my bees are able to come back so quickly on the non-zone 8 lands is because they have the landform match, and it tends to line up. So I'm gonna have to do some math about it and see, what I have as far as upgrades go and stuff like that. But there is potential in the future where I do end up, doing a full 20 different squads based purely on like matches to try and maximize the capacity of the bees I have available. But if I do decide to do that, I will do a whole video breakdown of the math and my thought process and my spreadsheets and how I'm going about doing that. So you'll notice the app crashes. That only happens here on this iPad. So I might start streaming on my phone. I do not have that problem ever on my phone. The other thing you'll notice is the first send out when you log into your account, there's always a little bit of a lag delay. That has to do with your assets. I think it's the metadata of your assets loading into the game, and you'll notice it's just the first send. That's going to happen regardless of what you do. That lag delay scales with the amount of bees in your hive, the amount of assets you have staked to your account. The larger your hive you have, the longer wait you have. Mine, I'm running about 250-ish bees, so you notice it's about 10-15 seconds, nothing horrible. Just a tad bit annoying the first time you go to send out your bees. So we'll go ahead and finish doing our harvest hunt. Again, doing the 9-3 ratio. We got 4 lands left. I'm going to be working on my guide today on Twitter, but one of the things I would suggest is if you're a whale coming into the ecosystem is, man, if you can get it set up so that you have all zone 5 and higher lands that you're able to harvest and hunt on yourself, that's part of my strategy going forward is making sure I have enough of my own higher zone lands that I'm not dealing necessarily with the competition, not necessarily giving out my harvest and hunt fees to other people. I have to hold on to them myself. So I just exhausted most of my zone 5 and zone 6 without competition. I have a few now that are there is a dozen bees on there fighting for it right now. So again, not really bothering me too much. Worst case scenario, when I check back in 4 or 5 hours, I still have a couple bees straggling there, and I'll just fill the land back up. That's kind of what determines, my HXD output for the day, my hunting output for the day is, one, my check-ins. If I can squeeze in, an extra couple check-ins, every 3 hours as opposed to 4 hours or 5 hours, I can usually get an extra cycle off. But the other thing is just competition levels. Like if all of my lands are bare, then that in conjunction with me checking in a little bit more frequently is what really really kicks my HXD production into gear for that day. So again, on average, I'm bringing in about 1,150 HXD a day with around 115-ish honey pots from hunting. The last week, I think my best day was 1,450 HXD, with my worst day being, just over 1,000 HXD. So those are kind of the benchmarks I'm looking for. And yeah, so that's a full cycle. You can see it took, oh man, I don't even know how long it took. 5, 10, I don't have a timer in here. Oh, there we go, about 15 minutes with me kind of walking through it with an additional crash with my claims on the first part. So I'd say on average probably closer to 10 to 12 minutes for a full send. And again, 5 times a day, that's HoneyLand for me at this point in time until we get a little bit more in-depth strategies. And that's just the actual gameplay of the harvesting and hunting loop. So until next time, later.